Ladies and gentlemen, good evening everyone. Please, as usual, be aware of the fire procedure. We are not expecting one tonight, so if one does happen, it will be for real, folks. Thank you very much. We have, what apologies do we have, please, Jackie?
Apologies tonight from councillors Richard Wright, Tom Donnelly, Jean Monks, Gary Purdy and Philippa Tilbrook.
Thank you. Public participation? There is none. You've had a copy of the previous minutes of the previous meetings. I propose that they're a true record. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Shirley? Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Are there any interests tonight? No? Take that as no. Thank you. Then we'll move on to the business of the meeting. Item 5, which is planning, entitled Planning for the Future Commercialism. I'll ask the Chief Executive. Dorcas, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, members will recall that we had a members' workshop in November on a proposed change of direction for the Council to follow a commercial agenda. Members were supportive of that approach and we said we'd bring a paper to this Council meeting to say how we might take that forward. This paper suggests or recommends 3 strands of that approach. The first is the adoption of a commercial strategy that has as its core purpose the creation of revenue income streams that will support the long-term financial viability of the Council and support indeed us continuing to deliver our core statutory services. It also suggests the creation of a members' working group based on voluntary proportionality for the time being, to report back to this Council in May on the creation of a formal members' board. The reason for this is that if we are to operate more commercially and in a commercial world, we as a Council have to get rid of some of our own bureaucratic barriers in terms of decision making, because if we want to act like a business, we've got to be prepared to move quickly at times. And the idea behind the member working group leading to a member board is to help facilitate that process. We're also recommending the creation of an investment fund, which we're proposing to convert the existing Investor Save reserve that we currently have, and in Karen's budget paper that follows, there is the suggestion that we add more to that reserve to help move this agenda forward. And that was all I was going to say.
Councillor Rose.
Well, Chairman, we have debated this before, as Chief Executive has reminded us. I've been to 2 conferences recently. One was the District Council Network Conference, which the Council paid for, and the other was the Conservative Local Government, which I paid for, so I was getting that point. And in both cases, we had sessions on how councils were becoming more commercial, and there's no doubt in my mind that we're slightly behind the track as far as that is concerned, because a number of district councils of all political persuasions have in fact gone down this route, and obviously they're going down that route cautiously and carefully, but there's no doubt that it is proving successful, and the returns they can get in comparison to what banks are currently offering are extremely good. Now, some might ask, is this the business of local government to get involved in things commercial? I can certainly remember the days when the very idea of being commercial for a local authority was just not to be accepted. But I think we moved on, and the circumstances are such, with the financial constraints placed on councils, that to my mind this is an obvious course of action, and I hope members will support it. There are opportunities, because this is a two-way process. Not only can we enhance the council's returns, but we can also help others and facilitate projects that might well not otherwise get off the ground. I'm not recommending or even suggesting that there should be any risky investments, but there are many out there in the private sector. Chairman, as you will know, that this is a very successful route for them to pursue. So I'm more than happy to move the recommendation that we do take this forward, and obviously at the May meeting we will consider the criteria and how this will work out. And I do have nominations for our 4 members at the appropriate time, assuming that this motion is carried.
Councillor Catt.
Thank you, Chair. The way in which the recommendations are couched, particularly recommendation for the setting up of a working group to bring forward proposals to the May meeting, whereby the council sets up a board with detailed terms of reference, criteria assessment and delegated powers. It is nothing new as far as this council is concerned. This is something which was done many years ago when the council sold off its housing stock, and there was a need for decisions to be made quickly and not wait for the usual round of meetings, which could be 6 weeks away. As far as the detailed assessment of criteria for projects goes, as Councillor Rose has said, we're not at the forefront of this, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can draw on the experience of other councillors, and I would expect officers to bring forward proposals to any working group that would enable us to draw on their experience. So I have no hesitation in seconding the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Ratcliffe, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I certainly echo the comments from the 2 previous councillors, and I just wanted to say a short, make a short statement, as it were, just again in support of this this whole recommendation. I think we're all aware that this council, like so many other local authorities, has been hit by year-on-year government funding cuts. Whether or not you agree with the reasoning behind that is another matter, but what it has done is to severely deplete our resources for financial investment. The years when capital projects like the ABC or the ARC have taken place is very much a thing of the past. Fortunately, delivering services and statutory ones at that is a priority that we have continued with, and no real cuts have taken place. But unfortunately, we have been forced to review non-statutory ones. So it's very clear that the time has come to explore commercial opportunities and to increase our revenue, so that just once again we can be a proactive and creative council. But of course, what we must bear in mind is whatever we do along this road must not conflict with the ethos of council protocol, or indeed interfere with the responsibilities and obligations that we all have as elected councillors, or indeed with the level of service delivery that we offer to our Derbyshire Dales residents. So provided that these things are borne in mind, it seems to me that this is something that all of us can get behind and produce the best outcomes for this council of ours.
Councillor Slack.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I fully support this, Chair. We've been forced into this situation by continuous government cuts. Then again, it's we woke up suddenly and find out we've got to do things differently. And I support this very much. I think we can. Some councils have been doing this quite a number of years and have made a success of it. So there's no reason why we shouldn't make a success of it if we wisely invest. It's just doing the wisely investment, which I'm sure the officers and everyone will take part in. So yes, I'm fully supportive of this, Chair, and I think if it's going to bring returns for services to our council, it's all to the good. So yeah, I fully support this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is something I wholeheartedly support because it's only common sense. I'm not going to be political about this, but you know, all councils are having to find extra income streams, and this is one which we can take an active role. And I hope that all parties can be involved in this. I do believe that I've looked at the strategy on 110 to 112 in the report, and I think it's fairly sound, but I feel that there's also opportunities outside that, and if the opportunity comes forward, we mustn't just be tied down to Derbyshire Dales, but we should be able to go a little bit further if that return it proves profitable. There are questions that I was going to ask about financing and about governance arrangements, but that would be at a later stage. But I am wholeheartedly in support of this, and I think it's something that we should all consider and support.
Thank you. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I represent the council on the Derbyshire National Park Authority Board, and we have been commercialising our assets for the last 18 months. In fact, we sit on a commercial director who's come up with lots of different plans, including Castle Visitor Centre, and now then something for the Millersdale station side. So, and that's been very successful, and you know, I can certainly recommend that to this authority. Thank you.
Have we got anyone else? Councillor Irene Rapp.
It's really just a question in it, and I would like to think that we could join with our fellow other districts that we border with if they have a joint commercial aspect, and I would appreciate where we've had to cut things that we perhaps would have liked to have moved on a little better, say environmental issues, the ethos of improving the environmental aspects, or we could join with something where we not only invest but we take part in changing as councils things like, you know, the plastic issue that we're all talking about, the worries that we've got for the planet in that. I think that there are some things that we can bring up ethos of what we believe, not just politically for me, but also as a citizen. We're leaders in it, so that we don't fall down on the leadership role that I've experienced over years that we have done. I think that local government were in the forefront once the legislation came into with regard to disability and equalities and those sorts of aspects, data protection, things like that. Things that we need to lead on and have some leadership built into our businesses that we are perhaps going to join with, or indeed we have ourselves. So I'm hoping it will be approached that. And of course we always have the rurality aspect of index, which is very important, that we can sustain our communities because of what we're doing, not detracting from it. And that we, of course, I'm sure the Chief Executive wouldn't let us take our eye off what we're here for in the first instance. So I think that's just a point I'd like to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Tiverton.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed from Dorcas's opening remarks that you wanted to change the thinking from a council to business. And I noticed in the working group that you're suggesting 4 members of the executive and 2, presumably, from the council. May I suggest that there may be more from the council with business experience, and the board may not be.
Councillor, I think we may. Did you want to answer that, Councillor Rose? Sorry, talkers.
What I've recommended is a working group of members that is proportional, politically proportional. So that's 4 from the ruling group and 1 from
I say I
the other
understood
group.
it to be 4 from the executive and 2 members. That's what I... Thank you for clarifying it.
Thank you. Have I got any other speakers on this one? Thank you. The motion has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much.
Can I do the nominations now? Chairman? I think 2 nominees are...
Yes, please.
Councillor Shirley, Councillor Fitzherbert, Councillor Clapp and Councillor Rose.
Thank you very much. We don't have to, do we have to do anything on that? Did the other groups want to nominate now? Or you'll reserve your choice? Yeah.
Yeah, Lib Dems, if we do get a seat, it'll be myself.
Thank you very much. Okay. Item 6, then the capital programme 17-18 to 22-23. Karen, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to highlight to members that there are no new bids in this capital programme. It's just been updated to reflect slippage, and we're also asking you, as well as the capital programme, to approve the prudential indicators and minimum revenue provision statement. I'm happy to take questions.
Councillor Catt.
Chairman, this is the second piece of positive news this evening, I think. It was 3 years ago that I commented on the capital programme when it was proposed before the council and said how concerned I was that we as a council were getting to a point where we might not be able to fund a capital programme in the future. But things have moved on hugely in the last 3 years, and we find ourselves now with a very, very healthy capital programme, one which we couldn't possibly have been expecting to see before us 3 years ago. I had no hesitation whatsoever in moving the recommendations set out in the report.
Councillor Stevens.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. I think we are all aware that there's adequate funding there, but I think we are also all aware that there still remains high-risk items that we have to be conscious of. But I am sure that Karen and the team will be watching those, and if there's any problems with anything coming through, we will be alerted to it. I am confident on that. I'm happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pauly, I've got.
Yes, statistics and finance not my bag really, but I'm going to ask the question even if I look before. Can you tell me why, when we're discussing this coming Thursday, the public convenience review, we haven't got any figures in here under Appendix 2 future liabilities for the costs that might come out of that?
Karen, do you want to answer?
There is a budget for rural conveniences which is aims to, for rural conveniences we've put in £41,000 for 18-19, and that's to be used where we're hoping there'll be community asset transfers.
More on Thursday.
Page 23.
Page 22.
Oh, I'm looking at future liabilities, not in the draft programme.
Because all the liabilities that we're aware of are in the programme.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. I told you I didn't really understand.
Well, thank you for the clarification. Councillor Sue Burford.
Thank you, Chair. My question might be a bit of a follow-on from that one, actually. That is on page 23, and the potential future liabilities. There seems to be, well, there's certainly 2 surveys that go back to 2009, the Bakewell Cemetery Chapels and the Station House at Matlock. I'm just wondering how we actually prioritise when they might or might not be done. I mean, if I'm being parochial, certainly the station house at Matlock I would have thought was in dire need of being, the repairs being done there. I mean, there are people living in it, and I mean, I'm not privy to what the survey says, but just looking at it, I would imagine that there are quite significant repairs required there. And just the other one that was mentioned in the survey is 2014. The metal windows in the town hall. I assume we're meaning those, are we? And I'm just wondering whether, you know, where's that on a priority compared with, say, works to the station house, where we're expecting people to live and pay rent where it's not up to scratch, when nothing's going to happen to us if we don't have these windows repaired or replaced.
Well, welcome. Sorry, excuse me, Ken. Welcome. Please take a seat at the back. That's fine. Are you Mr. Lewis or Mr. Redfern?
Redfern.
Right, you had a 1 in 2 chance, okay? Please bear with us while we're in the first agenda before we get to your piece. Might be a bit late, okay? Sorry, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. Both of those items were originally in the capital programme, but at the time that Councillor Catt alluded to several years ago, when we thought we had insufficient funding, members agreed to take those out of the capital programme, and we kept them on this list to keep an eye on them. So at some point in time when we feel we have got sufficient funding, members could consider them, and we could score them and bring them back in possibly. I think Rob knows a bit more about Station House.
Yes, so the residents are our sole council tenants, and we work with them very closely to make sure that they're happy with the state of the property. If there are repairs, we do respond to those quite quickly, but as they're slightly older now, we want to work at their pace and not enforce changes to them, so we're happy to wait with them really and pitch the repairs at the right time.
Am I okay to come back, Chair?
You may.
So no, I'm happy that you know, we're in consultation with these residents, but £20,000 for significant repairs, that's what I'm not very clear. What are these? Can you tell us what these significant repairs are?
I've not got a repair list with me, but typically that kind of price, you'd be looking at rewiring or new roof, new windows, that kind of thing. Things that would cause a big disturbance to an older couple that perhaps don't want too much disturbance at the moment.
That's fair enough, yeah.
Councillor Mike Radcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment, and then I have 2 questions for Karen. I think it goes without saying, of course, how reliant we are on her department for being fiscally sound, and she must get tired of hearing me say it, but you know, all credit where credit's due. I think she does a wonderful job. But it has to be pointed out in the light of the previous agenda item, her very pertinent note that the majority of this capital programme is being spent on enhancing and replacing existing assets. You know, these are not capital projects as I used to know it. So to that end, I wanted to ask Karen, no doubt she'll confirm what I'm asking, is there an element of reserves that we regard as contingency funding, or is contingency funding based solely on what we have in our reserves?
Karen.
Because there is so much that we seem to be doing to simply to put things right, if I can express it like that.
We have got contingency reserves, we've got working balances, so we've got a working balance of £1 million, and we've got a general reserve of £1 million. So the purpose of the general reserve is to cover unforeseen expenditure. So we have got that you know, to help with anything that comes as an emergency. But obviously, once it's spent, it's gone. As I've shown in the report, in section 1.5.2, even after this capital programme is financed and taking off the list of items in Appendix 2, there's still a balance of funding left of 1.6 million to address some of the things like a possible travel aside, rock faces at Matlock Bath, and so on. At this stage, those are all the potential liabilities that the corporate leadership team could identify.
And then just one other, if I may, which is in respect of your projections for Section 106 contributions, which go through to March 2023. Do these also include revenue that will start to come our way, hopefully, from the emerging CIL, community infrastructure levies?
No, these are purely Section 106 agreements that we have already been agreed.
So do you think there'll be an additional amount of revenue to be gained from that?
It could be if the...
Oh, right. But it's not one
it's
that
not
you...
built in yet.
I see, okay.
Councillor Flisser.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, well, I tend to agree with Mike in that the way that we operate now isn't what it was a decade ago, when we could think up projects and have them as capital projects and raise the finance and do things. But on the other hand, we're quite lucky that we keep saying every year that we've still got a capital programme at all. Yeah. And that's where I have to come from. I've got three questions on this, and one was going on from what Councillor Burfoot was saying, but my angle on that, on the station house at Matlock, is that those repairs were found in a survey in 2009. Wouldn't it have cost us a lot less in 2009 to have done those repairs than what it's going to cost today? And I wonder what the difference of that cost is. Another question I've got is on vehicle renewables, and I'm just wondering what size fleet have we got now? Because if you look at the amount of money we're going to spend each year, for the next 4 years it's going to average out at £200,000 per year for vehicle renewals. And yet on the fifth year we jump to 632,000. Well, you know, how many vehicles have we got? Are they on lease? Are they our own vehicles? Are they at an age where they've got to be renewed? Are they at an age where we just want a new vehicle? I think there's a lot of information there that we need to understand just where the money is going to go, because that is a huge amount of money that with any sensible looking at that, we could make some savings. And the final thing that I wanted to bring up was office technology. And I know that we've got to have some new additions, as we seem that we've always got to have. But how has that GDPR affected what we need in our office technology?
Andrew, do you want to answer those? Or Rob?
Does Rob want to answer the first?
Rob, go first.
I'll understand with the first one.
Okay, thank you.
I think, I mean, build cost inflation does vary from year to year. Some years it can be as high as 7%, other years it can be lower, nearer 3%. Of course, if we went out to tender for works, we would go through the procurement process and make sure we've got value for money at the time. But I think that, as I said earlier, the main point is we've got older residents who don't want repairs forced on them, and they're happy where they are. And we're keen to make sure that the essentials are done, like wiring repairs, boiler service, things we have to do legally. And we'll work with the residents when they're prepared to have more expensive works done. We have been, we will offer them support and guidance through our Age UK colleagues to make sure that they get independent advice as well. But for the time being, they're happy they are where they are, and we don't want to force additional repairs on them.
Karen?
With regard to vehicles, the vehicle renewal scheme that's in the capital programme is currently under review, and we're working with Ashley's team to review that. So we're hoping to be able to have a thorough examination of which vehicles are due for replacement when, how long they're likely to last, and so on. With regard to your question about office technology and GDPR, the GDPR hasn't actually cost us anything more in terms of office technology. We've had to spend money on consultancy, and we've also engaged an information governance officer, but it hasn't affected the expenditure on office technology directly.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Moss-Burford, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to dwell on the station house at Matlock too much.
Nor do we.
Just but one observation I've got, having seen it quite frequently over recent months and years and so on, is the number of trees in the garden, and it's another subject I've raised, of course, before in other contexts and other sites. But this is a very small garden area which isn't used by the residents at all, next to the bus station, and those trees, I think, if they're not already, they will soon be causing problems to the structure of the building. So I think things like that need to be looked at so that we don't have a sort of a demolition project on our hands.
Okay, thank you. Point noted. Councillor Slack.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at 1.5 projects, the Traveller's site and works to the rock face at Matlock Bath are liabilities at this time and not been approved by members yet. They will be subject to reports of policy committee or the council at appropriate time. If 660,000 is deducted from the 2.3 million, it leaves the council a balance of 1.65. Is that a guesstimate? 666,000 is a guesstimate, is it really?
Karen?
The 660,000 is actually the total of all the projects on Appendix 2.
Oh, it's a total of all? Yeah. Right, Karen, thank you.
Thank you. I've got no more speakers on my list. It's been moved and seconded. I'd like to put it to the vote, please. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Then move to item 7, Councillor Rose.
Just a moment, Chairman, and I don't pretend to be either George Osborne or Philip Hammond or any other Chancellor of the Exchequer. It's a totally different matter. This is about our district council budget and eventually setting out a council tax 2018-19. So I'm not intending to speak too long tonight about our proposed increase of 2.99% for a Band D property, especially in the light of the reports we've previously discussed, especially on the subject matter of commercialisation. I hope members will share my view that the recommendations put forward by Karen and team should be supported. As before, and Councillor Ratcliffe already alluded to this, they put a lot of hard work into the preparation of all the important information and detail on behalf of us all. And I'd like to thank her and, of course, her colleagues and everyone really in the team that have done all the hard work behind the scenes. Now, I'm not going to beat around the bush. The truth is that we're expected to increase our council tax bill by 2.99%. Everything that has been hurled at us by the government says just that. Particularly the reduction in grant funding and the reduction on the amount we're allowed to spend. Unfortunately, and I take no pride in this, there will be the third increase in 8 years, because for 5 years prior to 2016-17 we actually froze council tax, which was was not a mean achievement, but we actually had an incentive to do that at the time. Some, I'm sure, will recall when the government, Eric Pickles in particular, were sort of encouraging us to freeze council tax. The inflation rate and cost of providing services over that 8-year period bears no comparison to this modest request. It only goes to prove that we have worked hard to reduce costs and make savings in many ways, as well as increasing income to help balance the books. But clearly we cannot ignore the significant changes which have led us to seek an increase this year, although it is not all bad news. Paragraph 2.3 of the report mentions some of these, and they include the 11% reduction in settlement funding assessment, on the plus side an increase of 79,000 in the Rural Services Delivery Grant, up from 398,000, thanks to the hard work of Sparse and DCN and the LGA, but then of course it's almost cancelled out by the loss of transition grant in the sum of 77,000, so they give with one hand and take us on the other. And the other sort of significant item is a large reduction in the new homes bonus of £308,000. Now, I've not been afraid from time to time to criticise governments of all political colours when they have not treated district councils fairly or ignored the extra cost of providing services in vast rural areas like ours. Now, those of you who have been to the forum meetings and seen Karen's presentation will have seen a chart that makes it quite clear that rural authorities as a whole are significantly worse treated in terms of funding than urban authorities. And why is that? Actually, nobody really knows the answer, because I think we do know that rural authorities do have additional costs to face. You know, emptying the bins is a far more complicated affair than just running up and down a town and with houses on either side. I think we all know that. So I think our membership of Sparse and other organisations is absolutely vital, and Karen makes mention of that in the last item of the agenda. So we continue to lobby the government to make it clear to our Member of Parliament that rural areas like ours need to be properly recognised as extra costs are incurred. So hopefully if members agree that latter report on fair funding, that will definitely form part of our representations. And we can't do this alone. We can only act as a collective body. You know, with respect, I don't think anybody's going to take much notice of Derbyshire Dales District Council jumping up and down about lack of funding. We've got to be doing it for all rural authorities, and that's the best way forward. And we know that the elephants in the room as far as funding of local government as a whole are concerned are still this whole cost of social care. And we made it clear from time to time that social care should not be funded by taking from one tier and giving it to the other. Business rate retention needs to ensure that rural districts are treated fairly, and it does not lead to more going to the upper tier or other areas at our expense. You know, that's something we've yet to see how that's going to pan out as to whether additional monies will be earned through Derbyshire being a pilot scheme. I hope it will. It certainly looks favourable, as paragraph 4.2 anticipates. But there is no room for complacency, as Karen's report makes clear. We're very conscious that the amount we receive in future years continues on its downward trend. This means all the effort we have put into finding savings must of necessity continue in earnest. We still need to ask ourselves those fundamental questions. Do we need to provide this service at all? Can it be provided better by others? Hopefully Ash is going to come up with an answer for that later in the week, or later in the month rather, on leisure. Can we improve it ourselves? And can we work in partnership with others to provide this service? So those are the fundamental questions we ask ourselves and must continue to ask ourselves. And of course we will be discussing the whole subject matter of public conveniences on Thursday and again later, and the issue of discretionary rate relief, which I'm sure will make an interesting debate. The ongoing reviews have continued to ask these questions, and we will need to continue to do so. And the letter review puts that into very sharp focus, as it is our cost list and, as Matt Ratcliffe's already observed, the largest non-statutory service. It's not one we're obliged to provide, but one I think we've always prided ourselves on providing, and I hope that what comes will be welcome. The reports before you set out the future financial position of the Council very clearly, and I consider we're all very familiar with what we have to do. I would, however, wish to thank the staff for what they've done, what they're doing on our behalf to achieve these objectives. Councillor Catt and I had the privilege of going to a core briefing session this afternoon, and not been to one of those for many years. There were 35 staff in the room. I wouldn't like to say they'd asked lots of questions. They did until Councillor Catt provoked one or two of them to, you know, they wanted to know what councillors did. Now, I'll leave that challenge with all my colleagues, how they might have answered that question. I'm not going to answer it tonight. I think we all know what we do, but it was a very interesting session and well worthwhile being part of. From that aside, we know the public expect more and want us to maintain the excellent level of services we provide, and we will do our best to continue to do so. But the expectation of further grant reductions and other changes that Karen's mentioned in her report means that we will always have to continue to watch that very carefully. Right, and that was depression. Because I think we need to sort of look at some of the positive things we've achieved. I said to the staff this afternoon that we seem to have spent the last 10, 15, 20 years, someone will help me with recollection, Councillor Bliss and I, we seem to have concentrated on government cuts, and it doesn't matter which particular party was in power, it was always government cuts, and it went, particularly as far as district councils were concerned. But we've had some positives. The local plan, as we all know, has passed through its various stages. We've replaced our car park and ticket machines, and hopefully they're more efficient. A new leisure provider will be in place shortly. I think our commercialisation agenda offers many exciting opportunities, and I think many members have spoken very highly of that, so I hope we can come up smiling as far as that's concerned in due course. We have set money on one side to help our economic development objectives, and we continue to do our best to prize money out of Sheffield City Region and D2 N2. And it's hardly for me to say, as chairman of the leading group in the Peak District, that thank God that was there to help fund many of the local businesses. It has helped fund it over the last few years. Our local projects fund is up and running, and I think it is proving popular with members and their local communities, but even that will have to be reviewed in due course. As Councillor Cass and others have pointed out, we still have a very ambitious capital programme, so it's not all bad news. There are some good things out there, and I think we need to focus on that. So our aims remain, as they always have been for some time. That's to keep the Dales as one of the best performing small rural districts in England for as long as we can. That we continue to punch above our weight, that we continue to give value for money and do more for less. That seems to be the trend with all. To maintain as many frontline services as we can, but in doing so it is our duty as members to take responsibility for our decisions. We're the ones who are making this decision, and we can't hide behind that. And we have to explain that to our constituents, and I know many will always try to do that. So despite all the many challenges that face us, let's try and continue to work together to achieve these important aims. So, Chairman, I would like to move the recommendations that set out on page 29 of the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Catt.
Thank you, Chair. We've had several years now when all we've had is nothing but a negative outlook. We haven't had that creative and proactive outlook that Councillor Mike Ratcliffe referred to earlier on. But for me, there is now a real glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. I think the last 3 years has seen a real success in terms of reducing the amount that we need to save at the end of the period that we look at and call the medium-term financial plan. Page 48, the target is now 1.146 million. It wasn't that long ago that that figure was 1.7 million. That's what we've achieved over the last 3 years. We still have some remaining very difficult decisions to take, but if those go the way that I believe they should, then we will be down to much less than £500,000 to look for in 3 years' time. To me, that means we can begin to be positive again. We can begin to be creative again, and we can begin to go forward with positive plans. The commercialism paper that we've had before us, the capital programme that we now have, that was in doubt some time ago. I think that it all adds up to good news for the future. So I have no hesitation in seconding the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mike Ratcliffe, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to respond in quite the eloquent way that Councillor Rose proposed the motion, but simply to say that what's very apparent and has become apparent over the last few years, that he has certainly become a little bit more realistic about the needs of this council and what it is that we have to do if we are going to continue as a small local authority. I might disagree with him over where we need to spend money and perhaps where we should be looking for revenue, but what you can't deny with Councillor Rose, he is very protective and supportive of this district and the need to keep going as a council that looks after the best interest of its residents. And I think we have to accept that we need to set a realistic revenue budget, even though it is perhaps more than we might wish to have done under other circumstances. The comment that I would ask all of you to accept is that 2.9% or 2.99% might seem very low when expressed as a percentage, but it, like statistics, it belies the reality of hard coinage, real money. And whilst again I would accept that this is an increase of only about 11p a week on a council tax bill, nevertheless, this is 11p that's added to all the other rises that are going on and hitting people's pockets. And small that it might be when stood alone, it might well be that which produces hardship in particular circumstances. Now, one of the things I would like to do, if you'll allow me, is just to turn our attention beyond this particular financial year. I think we all of us are accepting now that there will be an impact on our revenue once the government does away with its rural service delivery grants and the new home bonus and any other funding that is at this moment obliged to give us. Would we not therefore accept that we're getting to a position where local government, such as operates in Derbyshire Dales, which is funded or will in the future be funded solely on council tax and business rates, could be untenable in the long term? And secondly, do you share my anxieties for this council's financial future after 2020 and post-Brexit, if it comes about, that there will be almost an inherent acceptance for ongoing year-on-year council tax rises, and even, dare I say it, for possible borrowing requirements.
Councillor Flisser.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I could have sat down and wrote the usual speech about the budget, as I have done for many years, but then I thought, well, I've got to look at this very pragmatically and what the council needs. And if we took any other decision tonight, I think that we would be letting what this council has is a very good and expertise financial team behind it, and it's kept us on the straight and narrow for many years. Now I want to use a word that Councillor Ratcliffe used earlier on tonight, and that's being proactive. And Albert, you just mentioned that in saying that I don't totally have the same enthusiasm that things are going to suddenly take off again after so many years of fighting cuts year on year on year. But I do believe that a 2.99% rise is acceptable at this stage, because if we looked at anything else lower than that, we'd have to turn around and look at what we'd have to cut to meet and balance our budgets. And that, after trying to look through some of the accounts, that was a very difficult thing to do, because we're now right down to the bone. Regardless of whose fault it is, we are where we are, and the council have a finite amount of money, and even at home we can't go out spending money that we don't earn. And it's the same, and even more so, with public money. So I am going to support this tonight, but I do hope that we can be proactive in the future and look for that oomph, if you like, to get moving again, that's been stifled by so many people. One thing that pulls me back a little bit is that all funding that we get from all sources, it's not guaranteed, and things change every time. So we could make a speech about one set of funding, but next year it could have disappeared and it could have gone under another name, and then we'd be fighting again. So we've got to look at things in a pragmatic view. So therefore, as I say, tonight I shall be supporting this budget. I just want to make a couple of points under the service plans, because this affects what I believe is important. And under the economic development, I noticed that our target this year was for 75 established businesses to be supported. And we're only up to date to 40, and there's only a month to go, and yet within the report it said that we're on track. So I would like to know what we're doing to pull that extra 40 businesses by the end of the month. Because it all goes along again within the corporate section. We see the falling numbers all the time of people taking part. And the people that think that this council offers good value for money has fallen. And only 26% of people feel that they can make a difference to the decisions that we make in council. So are we doing things exactly the way that we could do them? Should we be looking at our consultation process in 2018? Because we get many people saying that the consultation hasn't taken place. The consultation doesn't give us enough scope. So I think that we have to look at it, try to build the confidence back up in the community, and then they wouldn't feel as bad when a rise of 2.99% hits them again. And I think we're lucky this year because a lot of councils are in a lot worse condition. They're either going bankrupt, they're either going for far more than what we have in higher councils. And I think we're very lucky to get away with this. So I will support this tonight.
Councillor Martin Burford.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with a lot of what previous members have said, particularly Councillor Rose, actually. And, I'm going to probably repeat some of what he said. If you look at in 2.2, the paragraph about the Secretary of State, it's quite pertinent, I think, to the debate. The Secretary of State said that he is committed to ensuring the needs of rural areas are met and recognises the particular costs of providing services in sparse rural areas. So in return for that, he's giving us a grand total of £79,000 in this rural services delivery grant. And as previous speakers, particularly Councillor Fittle, said, we don't know what that's going to mean in the future. Is that going to be still under that heading, or is it going to be something else, or is it going to be scrapped? Because unfortunately,
can you get close to the microphone, please?
Derbyshire Dales, being in the East Midlands, is very badly treated, and I think the Shire counties in the East Midlands believe that they are the worst treated in the country, in fact, in terms of their funding settlements, particularly Leicestershire and even Derbyshire, for instance. As a result of that, of course, they put their council tax up to the maximum allowed, and that's the other thing, of course, isn't it? Because I think the government is assuming that the maximum council tax increase of 2.99% to avoid a referendum is going to be what's expected of most local authorities. So they're building that into their settlements, basically. So, as Councillor Rose said, they're giving with one hand and taking away with another. So the government has really passed the buck to local authorities for tax increases, rather than having a more progressive national tax system as part of a. In fact, I suppose I could say, if being political, that the Lib Dems initiated the higher threshold for paying tax in 2010 at the start of the coalition, and that's been increased subsequently. So I can't remember what the threshold is now. I think it's about £12,500, but it started off at 10,000, and that's of course been probably quite fair to low wage earners, so they're not going to suffer quite so much in the future. But that's now accepted by all political parties, I think, as a progressive means of taxation, or non-taxation, as the case may be. But I think if this council considers we've been badly treated, and I'm sure it does, because Councillor Rose repeats this quite frequently, why can't we ask Sir Patrick to convene a meeting of all Tory MPs, or a group of Tory MPs in Derbyshire, and put pressure on the government, equal, if not more, to more extent than the DUP, in extracting millions and billions for Northern Ireland. I think that's some pressure that could be put on the government, which would be more use than perhaps sending an occasional letter or email. So I will support this budget tonight, but I think we need to put more pressure on the government. In terms of rural services that are so much under pressure, as we've heard tonight, as Councillor Rose has said, it's so much more difficult and more expensive to collect bins and do other services in rural areas where you're travelling half a mile to the next property.
Councillor Irene Ratcliffe.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions, but I would like to highlight perhaps the aspect of our parish councils and our town councils. Of course, they can raise their precept without being capped, and they can take their part in their communities. And I know that there has been strides to negotiate with, to have partnerships with the parish and the town councils across Derbyshire Dales, and equally with our other partnerships, and I have seen some good workings. However, I've often come across political aspects after rates and things have been put up and council taxes there. And I note, of course, that Wirksworth are putting their council tax up by 13% this time, because the precept, I should say. That's because they are shouldering what we have and what we are not able to afford. So they are taking on more and more. If you want me to add to them, I can. but I won't give the list out now. But the number of things that the community in my ward has taken on. And as a county councillor, I know how well the parish councils work to try and to ameliorate some of the circumstances that we find ourselves. But we do disservice if we just keep our mouths closed. And I'm sorry, I will not be closed. I will tell you that we play a part. It is a good part. We've had good priorities as far as the needs of communities in a strategic way. But government, and this government, has been the worst in my council life, and I think in my adult life. I'm sorry to say, and so I say it because I really believe it, and I cannot believe the knock-on effects that we're getting. Now, I know that councils have to change and all organisations have to restructure, but there are questions to be had, and I don't want to be negative because I do think that we need to be proactive and have a vision in which we can, but there is a reality about the end of the tunnel. I'm sorry, unless we speak louder, then we do need to speak louder, and I have to applaud some of the council leaders in the country that have stood up for local government, not just their own area, but the whole concept and infrastructure for local government. You know, the impacts on communities, we are going to the next special council meeting and we'll see that impact. But I can tell you the impact for Wirksworth residents of Bowl Hill, Middleton and Wirksworth Town is that they are paying double because they're still paying their council tax to Derbyshire Dales that is relinquishing some of the assets, and I think that's the right thing for them to do because we want to keep our toilets, we want to keep things, and we do want to work, and our leisure centre, and our swimming pool. We can only do it though that we are honest politicians and we are honest. And I don't want to see what I've seen in the past when it comes to, and this will be the last budget before we go in front of the electorate next year, where we put ourselves on the block, and this is what we stand for. Well, I stand for partnership working and recognising, but we have a big leadership role here to tell the government to blooming hold on here. We are doing what we can, but we might be carrying on at the end of the tunnel, and people will ask, what do we do? And that is really important. I have spent the last 10 years thinking the two-tier system does not work when we are in a structure for metropolitans, etc., etc. I don't see the regionals up and coming and working well enough in terms of the aspect where we're finding ourselves in an exit of Brexit. You know, we need that. So I would support this, and I have said I will support this because we do need to keep stability and the finance aspect, but it's got to be fair. It's got to be across the whole area of Derbyshire Dales in their particular needs, and I hope that we'll note that. And I am pleased to see at one report that one system doesn't fit all and that we're becoming a little bit more flexible in that. But the issues, we have supported our five-year financial plan on this side, but we also want to say, although we're working together, we have got to say it out loud. Enough is enough, and we do need to champion our communities as they're working hard for us as the services are being reduced, because reduced they are being.
Councillor Finesse.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I put my hand in because I thought there was something missing from the appendix, but I've since found it.
Oh, I'm so glad. Councillor Slack.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Karen for a balanced budget in very, very difficult circumstances. Thank you, Karen. Councillor Rose mentioned about continuous cuts under progressive governments, but I've got to be honest, I've got to be fair. The cuts under this, first of all, the Liberals and the Conservative administration since 2010, and now the Conservatives on their own, have been the fiercest I've ever known in my life. They're the fiercest cuts I've ever known. And it's destroying the fabric of local government. Services are being destroyed by it. They don't seem to know where to go, the government. All they do is just push it onto local governments all the time. We've got to promise that we was going to get the business rate, but we only got a portion of it, really. So they say one thing and then they take it away again, same as Councillor Burfoot has said. But the problem is, in 2 years' time, where will we be in 2 years' time? We'll be out of Europe and we're in uncharted waters. So where will we be? It's a very, very, very difficult to predict what will go off in the next few years. And we're going to find it tough. I can't see this government relenting and producing prosperity again like we had under previous, my administration, we had in the early years of the century. So where will we be in 2 years' time? Who knows? Can anybody tell where we're going to be? Because I don't know, and I don't think anybody else knows where we're going to be after Brexit. I think it's the most unwise thing we're doing, leaving Europe personally, and I think it'll be a disaster on top of us. And I think some of the other side believe the same. So we're going to have a tough time in 2 years' time. So. We're going to have to work with our councils where we can. We're going to have to produce many things like commercialisation, which we're taking on now to produce more funds. So that's another product we can do. But same as Councillor Ratcliffe has said a few minutes ago, Works has gone on its own, and it's taken on the toilets, it's taken on the markets, it's really a proactive town council, and I'd like to congratulate Worcester Town Council in being a proactive and not going down the road we're going at the moment. So I will support this, but I'm very dismayed with what's going off at the moment, and I think with more trouble in store in the future years. I can't be as optimistic as Councillor Cat and say there's light at the end of the tunnel, because I think it could be a long tunnel, especially when we leave Europe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor. That's a rhetorical question in there. Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, can I introduce a note of positivity, please? Following the thread of the last two speakers, Councillor Mrs Ratcliffe and Councillor Slack, of this fairly plaintive cry of what do we do? Can I refer you to item 5, which is planning for the future, and say that we're already doing it, and we are moving on to our front foot by looking for a stream of income which we can control, which will be more and more, commercialism, not a great word. And can I just take you back many, many years to when I was a boy councillor, because this is a thing about timing, because it's been said a couple of times this evening about we're not in the first wave of councils doing this. When I was many, many, many years ago, when I was a baby councillor, the guy who was mentoring me, I was really anxious to bring to the table level bits I'd learnt about business, and I was really keen to get this. Is many, many years ago. And he said, Tony, just slow down, son. Lad, actually, he said, slow down, lad. Don't be a pioneer. Be a settler. And I said, Ian, what do you mean? He said, pioneers get scalped. Be a settler. And the point of it is the timing is perfect, because the first wave of councils have made the mistakes, we can learn from them, we can store that information and draw the talents and the skills of our officers and our members to plug the gap. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pauly.
Yes, I'm not going to make a long speech. I just wanted to ask a question about Appendix 3 and one of the items on the reductions in cost. Reduction salary costs. Could you explain why we've gone down £123,000 if we've kept the same staffing levels and we're paying more, because we're now paying the minimum wage and plus?
it's a result of vacant posts. If you remember, the head of environmental services left, and a big part of that is her salary because she wasn't replaced.
Okay, I've got nobody else on my list now. Councillor Rose, would you like to wind up?
Well, only briefly, Chairman. I mean, I'm not going to get into a political debate about who's to blame, and I'm glad others have made the same point. I think we all know in our heart of hearts that local government at district level have been facing cuts for many years, and I can remember a certain minister telling us we had to put our car parking charges up if we wanted more money when we sent a delegation down to London to look for store money, and they're all attitudes. All as bad as one another, as far as I'm concerned. So in a sense, I'm looking forward, Mike, to the challenge that will come to district councils in particular when we don't have any government funding. When it's just down to our own ability to raise income, our own ability to raise council tax, and business rate retention and the freedom that comes with that. Some of my colleagues out there, both Labour and Conservative, are sort of almost think that is an opportunity for local government to, if you like, extract themselves from the shackles of central government. And all central governments, in my opinion, in the United Kingdom, centralisation is far greater than it is in Europe. I don't want to get into the Brexit debate, Councillor Slack, and I actually agree with you personally. But you know, there are more councillors, there's more democratic accountability. Even in places like Germany, more of the national budget goes to local government than it does here. So my plea is perhaps one day someone might address all those fundamental questions. But for the time being, Chairman, we have to batter on with what we've got. So I hope everyone can support the resolution, which I believe has to be a recorded vote, whether we like it or not.
That's correct. Thank you very much, Councillor Rose. So just for clarity, if you look on page 29, it's been proposed and seconded, all those recommendations, and we're now going to take a recorded vote. Jack.
Councillor Atkin.
4.
Councillor Botham. 4. Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Catt.
4.
Councillor Chapman.
4.
Councillor Anne Elliott.
4.
Councillor Graham Elliott.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Horton.
4.
Councillor Massey-Bloodworth.
4.
Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
4.
Councillor Pawley. 4. Councillor Irene Ratcliffe. 4. Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Rose.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Slack.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Stevens.
4.
Councillor Swindle.
4.
Councillor Tibbenham.
4.
And Councillor... That's it.
That's unanimous. Thank you. Do we take a vote on that one as well? All right, okay. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. We'll just move on to item 8, the council tax setting. Karen, do you want to have a quick comment on that?
With members having just set our own council tax, this report now brings in the council taxes from the other preceptors, the County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, Derbyshire Fire and Rescue Authority and the various town and parish councils to come up with the recommendations set out in the report.
That's all right.
I formally move, Chairman. This is a formal resolution we have to adopt.
Okay, Councillor Catt.
Seconded, Chairman.
Okay. It's been proposed and seconded. We have a recorded vote on this one as well, please. Jackie again.
Councillor Atkin.
4.
Councillor Botham. 4. Councillor Bull.
4.
Councillor Martin Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Sue Burfoot.
4.
Councillor Catt.
4.
Councillor Chapman.
4.
Councillor Anne Elliott.
4.
Councillor Graham Elliott.
4.
Councillor Fitzherbert.
4.
Councillor Flitter.
4.
Councillor Froggatt.
4.
Councillor Finesse.
4.
Councillor Hill.
4.
Councillor Hobson.
4.
Councillor Horton.
4.
Councillor Massey-Bloodworth. 4. Councillor Morley.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
4.
Councillor Cawley. 4. Councillor Irene Ratcliffe. 4. Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
4.
Councillor Rose.
4.
Councillor Shirley.
4.
Councillor Slack.
4.
Councillor Statham.
4.
Councillor Stevens. 4. Councillor Swindle.
4.
Councillor Tiverton.
4.
That's unanimous again. Thank you very much, members, for that. Item 9, the Corporate Plan 2018-19. Steve Cates, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And as members will recall, your corporate plan is your primary strategy document that you always adopt this year along with the budget. You actually set the bones of it back at your November meeting. For the coming year, your 3 priorities were set as, well, in crude terms, jobs, housing and market towns. And they have been the same priorities for the last couple of years. So what this report does is set the targets under those priorities for the next few years, and also reports on progress on the current year's targets, and that is generally positive. Just to give a bit of information in response to a comment that Councillor Flitter made earlier, it might be of interest to all members in terms of our business support service. The target is to support 75 firms this year. We are now, as of the end of December, up to 58 businesses. So we are confident in the remaining 3 months of the year that it will get up to the target level. We are just a bit behind when it comes to reporting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Finesse.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to move these recommendations. I think the targets that we've set for this year were pretty ambitious. And they've certainly been well addressed. The majority of them are showing green, which we assume means they'll be completed by the end of the year. So the target for the next year, 16, even more ambitious. But of course, if they are achieved, they will greatly benefit the economy and the people of the district. So, as I say, I'm very happy to recommend them.
Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to second the motion. The plan clearly sets out the visions and aims of the District Council and lists the key improvement priorities. I'd like to thank Steve for his hard work in preparing it.
Thank you. Councillor Flitter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm thankful that Steve has pointed out that question that I had and not answered last time. But it does beg the question about reporting, because the last in the last report it stated that the report was to date, and the figures were different in that report to this report, and now we took another 3 months, so we are still behind. There's still a discrepancy in that figure.
Thank you. Any other speakers here? Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I felt I couldn't let this report go without making just a couple of small comments, which there may be in the form of questions too. But I couldn't help but note, and perhaps it's the cynic in me, that saw this priority aspiration of achieving 75% resident satisfaction with Derbyshire Dales keeping free from litter, and then sort of equating it, and I know maybe you would say there isn't a direct comparison, with the stickers that have been out on litter bins for a good number of years now that talks about Derbyshire Dales streets being 97% clean. I always feel that somehow that 97% is a slight exaggeration, and it never seems to equate with what people actually feel about litter in the district. Anyway, that's one thing. And then the second thing is about the reviving of stall markets. I think this has appeared on our corporate plans for probably the last 5 years, or maybe even more. And it seems to me that the time really is rapidly approaching when we should accept that the traditional markets and the stall markets in particular, unless they are specialised or farmer market, are really something of a thing of the past, and we have to turn to a new direction if we're going to maintain that sort of open trading aspect in our market towns. Incidentally, just coming back to something that my colleagues referred to earlier, I am pleased that Woksworth is taking over its market, because I know that they are looking at ways to inject a different style, if you like, of trading. And then just finally, I must mention it, I'm very pleased again to see the target of 105 new affordable homes. But I do hope behind that is going to be the resolve, if I can put it that way, to really get behind our local plan policy on affordable housing creation. 30% is what we should be achieving, 30% is what we should expect, and it should be almost a no buts policy.
Okay, thank you very much. Would anybody else around the table? No, thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded for approval and adoption. All those in favour, please show. Is that everyone? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 10, the Treasury Management Strategy 18-19. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. We're asking members to approve the strategy statement for 2018-19 and also the investment strategy itself.
Councillor Stevens?
Thank you, Chair. Well, there's a lot of detailed information in this report, and I'm sure that those members who attended some time ago the workshop given by Arlene Close will have found that background information they received very helpful in understanding the detail in the report. We do have to comply with this, but we're not on our own. All organisations and businesses, large or small, do need to be aware of the risks that can occur in the financial markets. But this report does comply with best practice and government guidance on the preparation of treasury management, and I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Councillor Morley, are you happy to second the motion?
Yes, Chair, I'll echo those sentiments and second it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to contribute? It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Now, item 11 is the fair funding review, which came as a separate paper later. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. This report explains about the government's consultation paper on a fair funding review. It could have serious implications for local government because it's looking at the way they're funded. I've tried to highlight in the report the key aspects of the consultation document so that members can understand the draft response that I've attached in Appendix 1. The response in Appendix 1 is based mostly on a template that was issued by the Rural Services Network, and they're strongly urging rural authorities to reply on these lines. The response deadline is the 12th of March, so we're asking you to approve this tonight.
Councillor Rose.
Well, I hope we can support this, Chairman. I think many of us in this room are probably aware that it's always been suggested that there were only about 3 people who ever understood how local government finance was worked out over many, many years, and 2 of them are probably dead. So one hopes that such a review might bring forward some sense, particularly the point I made earlier about rural areas and question 4, do you agree that rurality could be included in the relative needs assessment of a common cost driver? Yes, we strongly support the inclusion of that. That's a very positive answer. We've always found that this work that sparse carry out on our behalf and other sparse areas is very good indeed. Certainly value for money, our subscription. And I'm very pleased that Karen's incorporated those comments in the way she has. So I'm pleased to move it. And I think it's taking part in these consultations and responding positively in the way that's being recommended here is perhaps the most effective way we can of making our point. Because I think the government will only take notice of the collective body of local government as a whole. They seem very good at playing one council against the other or one body against another body if we don't speak with one voice. And we've all got to speak with one voice here, and here is one voice we can support.
Councillor Catt.
Yes, I agree with everything that Councillor Rose has just said, and second the motion.
Councillor Mike Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, there's certainly nothing to argue about in this. I have to say I am slightly sceptical about the fair element in this. And as a result, I wanted to ask Karen a more pertinent question, as it were, arising out of a funding review of this type. Do you think that we shall see a review on the council tax valuation process? I think the last one it was 1992, so it's more than overdue. And as a result of that, are you already beginning to conjecture impact?
Karen.
My view is that various governments have shied away from a revaluation of council tax because of the difficulties they know it will introduce. So I'd be very surprised personally if the government brought in a revaluation on the back of this exercise.
Oh, right, so you don't think they will?
I don't think so.
Councillor Flitter.
Yes, Chair, I think I came from the same wave as Mike said there. First thing I thought was what is fair funding, and it's pretty open in language terms because it depends on your needs and it depends on your outlook on life, on what's fair and what isn't fair. Well, what I am pleased about, and I should support this tonight, is the fact that for once we've seemed to have recognised, somebody has recognised rural deprivation. What it should be. And a lot of people are sceptical about rural deprivation and discount it. And we've laid it out quite clearly here. The problems that we have with low wages, high costs, transportation, all that type of thing, and it goes a lot further than just homes and homelessness. So I think there's a big issue to talk about there. And I think in this report, in this letter, I think we've outlined that very, very well indeed. And I'd like to thank Karen for that and wholeheartedly support it.
I've got nobody else on the table. Oh, sorry, Councillor Irene Ratcliffe. Beg your pardon.
It's just a question, Chair, thank you.
Okay.
Is it appropriate, or have you sent a copy to our MP, as we were sort of discussing earlier about championing us as a district council? It would be, that's the question, and if not, can we send it?
Once members have agreed it, I can certainly send a copy to our MP.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show.